The Islanders have made multiple sneaky good signings in free agency, and while these might not be the biggest names in the NHL, they do really have the potential to make a major impact on this Islanders season, especially one name we're going to break down on this episode of Islanders Digest. And free agency in general for the Islanders, in my opinion, was a huge win. Yesterday, we talked about some of the major contracts, including Jonathan Drouin, which I honestly think is a huge steal for the Islanders, so that video will be linked at the end of this one if you haven't seen it. But beyond those big moves, I think what Darsh really did in this free agency that was so underrated is he solved some of the Islanders' depth problems with really sneaky moves that I think can have a big impact on the season. Before we get into that, I do want to thank all of you who have already subscribed to the channel. The growth recently has been absolutely insane, growing over 500 subscribers in the past month, and we're going to continue to try to push to have more and more subscribers as we continue to put out Islanders content every single day. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? Be sure to join this Islanders community on YouTube. Now let's talk about some of these signings, and I think none were bigger than the Islanders signing David Rittich from the Los Angeles Kings. And this is a signing that really raised questions in my head. David Rittich is a backup goaltender, and one, to his credit, who has played a lot of games in the NHL. And what really is drawing my attention with Rittich signing with the Islanders is the goaltending market was absolutely abysmal this offseason. And while I don't think Rittich really deserved a big contract, he didn't get one. The Islanders are basically paying him league minimum salary. There's no risk to this deal. It is a one-year deal. It is, at the very least, it is insurance for the Islanders goaltending. But thinking about this on a deeper level, I really wonder what the situation is with Varlamov and the Islanders, because Rittich, while he is not the best goaltender in the NHL by any means, as we're going to talk about in just a second, he's good enough where he could have had a choice of several different teams this offseason, especially considering teams like the Philadelphia Flyers, who completely overpaid for goaltending. I think the fact that he decides to go to the Islanders is maybe raising some alarm bells about the state of Varlamov's health. And I do want to emphasize, as of right now, the Islanders have not said anything about Varlamov being on the LTIR. I keep on hearing a lot of hockey content with people just writing off Varlamov next season, saying he's gone, instantly putting him on LTIR when it comes to the Islanders salary cap. And that simply is not the case. From everything we've been told from the New York Islanders, and from what all the real insiders such as Stefan Rosner for the Islanders team have stated, Varlamov is expected to play next season. But I'm really wondering if perhaps maybe it's a situation where Varlamov is not going to be ready at the start of the year, or more likely it's a situation where perhaps he's going to need to rehab. I think one thing people are forgetting when it comes to Varlamov is he only played 10 games last season. And in most of those games, he did not look 100%. So even when he comes back, after having a year off, I know Varlamov is a veteran goaltender, but especially coming off a lower body surgery, it might take more time than you'd expect for him to get back into his groove. He might have to have a start once every 10 games or something like that to really get himself back into the NHL. So perhaps 10 is a stretch. But my point more is, the Islanders can't be playing Ilya Sorokin as much as they did last season, and if there's a situation where Varlamov cannot go as a backup who is set to play 20, 25, even 35 games for the Islanders, then they're going to need another goaltender such as Rittich, and I think that's why this signing happens. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Varlamov going forward. Just because, in my opinion, I can't see Rittich signing with the Islanders unless he thought he's going to get significant time. You look at his last 3 years in the NHL. This is a goaltender who played 34 games, 24 games, and then 21 games in the league to a varying degree of success. 3 years ago, he had a .921 save percentage. Last season, or 2 years ago, I would say, considering that last season is now the previous season, he had a .921, and then last year he had an .887, which really is not good. Especially when you consider he was on a Kings team which had one of the better defenses in the entire NHL, and they actually won the majority of those games, which actually tells me that he was playing these games against some of the worst teams in the NHL. And still, in those 34 games, that's actually kind of incredible that the Kings were as good as they were, considering how rough he played. 887 for that many games this season. I know they had a Vezina caliber goalie in Kemper, but that is really rough from Rittich. But still, in general, with Rittich, just a goaltender who plays a lot of games in the NHL. Definitely a huge upgrade over somebody like Hogberg, who really is an AHL starter, did not belong in the NHL, and you can tell by his positioning. He just did not look right for the Islanders. Rittich is not going to be like that. While he's not going to be a goaltender who wins you games, if he's playing games for the Islanders, he is going to be at least something that doesn't cause you to lose on a regular basis, which Hogberg, after his injury, really became that for the Islanders, where there were several games like in Nashville where he got put in after Ilya Sorokin had to leave the game, where I was honestly thinking, and from a perspective where I wanted the Islanders to tank, where there was no way they would possibly lose that game, and then Hogberg comes in and just absolutely blows it. Rittich is definitely be more stable in net, and it's going to be really interesting to see whether he actually gets a decent amount of games in the NHL. I think the best case scenario for the Islanders is Varlamov coming back. I do think when he plays at his A game, he's really the best backup goaltender in the entire NHL. Really question if he can still play at that level at this point. But I think even if he plays a level below that, and if he can just stay healthy, which is the big concern with Varlamov, he's a huge upgrade over Rittich. And one more thing I do have to mention when it comes to Varlamov is you also got to think about him staying healthy after this injury. I know a lot of questions have been about whether or not he's going to be back to start the year, but really that has never been a question for me. I fully expect Varlamov to start training camp. The question is whether or not he gets injured again at training camp, and I hate to be thinking that way, but just looking at Varlamov and what his trajectory has been with the Islanders in recent years, he's gotten hurt several times in training camp. On top of that knee, which is what I believe his lower body surgery was. I don't want to really confirm what that is because I have seen multiple reports. I think originally there was talk that it was a knee, but then people have backstepped that, but I do think it was his knee. Forget about the knee, assuming that is fully healed. The groin injuries are still consistently taking place, and he did not get any surgery to repair that, so I assume that is still going to be a consistent concern, and one of the reasons why Varlamov has consistently missed time for the Islanders has been that groin injury. It's going to be a luxury for the Islanders to have a third goalie in Rittich. How many games he plays is going to really depend on a lot of factors, but I think it is going to really ease the stress load when it comes to Ilya Sorokin, because in my opinion, especially in these seasons where the Islanders are not really contending, it does not make sense for the Islanders to play Ilya Sorokin for over 60 games. I think 50 should be his max. And frankly, if you look at some of the best teams in the league, the ones who actually go deep in the playoffs, they don't play their starting goaltender beyond 50 games for the most part. I know the Lightning are an exception there with Vasilevsky. For the most part, they're not playing that many games. I think Varlamov would be better playing less games. This was not the only big signing for the Islanders, and I think one of the sneakiest ones they had was actually Eathan Bear. You probably recognize Ethan Bear's name. This is a player who's really gone around the league and has had a decent level of success, although he hasn't been able to hold it in the NHL. It's also worth noting that he played with Matt Barzal in junior, so these two are actually really close friends, something that really adds another level to this. It's something that's really exciting, especially considering I think Ethan Bear is going to be getting some NHL time. We're going to see what happens with this deal, but you look at Ethan Bear and his stats in the NHL, he's played a lot of NHL minutes, and for a guy who you're signing on a two-year contract and likely going to be starting in the AHL, it's pretty good to see that he's played really the majority of his career in the NHL. While he was not getting the most minutes, he's actually done pretty well in the NHL. And when it comes to making the Bridgeport Islanders a better team, I think Ethan Bear is going to be a huge part of that if he plays in Bridgeport. But honestly, I'm going to say here, don't sleep on Ethan Bear making this team as a seventh defenseman. While I don't think it is the most likely outcome, you look at this Islanders defense right now with Pelech, Polak, Romanov, to D'Angelo, and then Boquist, Mayfield. I think Bear has a much better shot at making that seventh spot for this Islanders defense than people are really giving him credit for. Now, I know I actually do anticipate, well, I don't think Schaefer's going to make the team, and that might not be the most popular take. I think he's actually going to spend a year in college. But while I do think Isaiah George has a good chance of making this team, if not, I think Bear has a really good chance at starting with the Islanders in the NHL, at least as a seventh defenseman. And he's a player, again, looking at his stats, that can take that workload on. Now, last year he only played 24 games, but it was for the Capitals, one of the better teams in the NHL. Notably, throughout his career, he's been a pretty stable defenseman. His lowest plus-minus was a -5, and that was last year. So while you don't expect the world from Ethan Bear, he is a right-handed defenseman and someone who does provide decent value, especially considering coming off the bench. Islander fans know better than any fans in the entire league. This is a defense that has regularly been decimating decimated with injuries. I think that's honestly why Ethan Bear signs the Islanders. Just looking at the past few seasons for the team, it's unfortunate to think about, but Pelech has missed significant time. Polak has missed significant time. A lot of times, at the same time, this defense has missed multiple players at once. I would expect Ethan Bear to play several games in the NHL for the Islanders this season. And the final signing they have made, and I think this is a lot more of a low-key signing than the other two, is Matthew Highmore. He previously played on the Ottawa Senators, also played some time in the AHL. And at the very least, this is a signing that is going to improve their AHL roster. And at the best case, is a player who played 41 games last season. And if there are injuries on the forward core, he can fill in. I will say, I don't think he's going to have a shot to make the Islanders. Actually, kind of surprised he kind of went with the Islanders to sign a contract, because considering the logjam they have at forward, I really feel like there were actually other teams that he would have had a better shot at making the NHL, although maybe he's looking at the center depth at the depth level and thinking maybe if there's an injury there, he has a chance to step in. We'll see what happens with Highmore. Again, considering he has played 41 games last season in the NHL for the Ottawa Senators, and a couple other seasons he has had decent NHL time, he is a guy where if there are injuries, I would likely expect him to step up. But unlike the defense, I just don't see as many of those injuries coming for the Islanders. And if they do come, I just feel like there is more depth at forward. Still, he is a player we can see at the NHL level. I think he is worth noting. Other than that, the Islanders made a lot of decent signings at the Bridgeport level. I think adding a decent amount of talent to that team. The question will be, how will the coaching change that? And I think Rocky Thompson is going to do a really good job with that Bridgeport team. Let me know in the comments below what you think about these three signings. Which one do you think is the most important? I personally think it is Rittich in the goaltender. I think he's going to get a lot more games in the NHL than some people are anticipating. Even if Varlamov is relatively healthy, it's up to anyone's guess what that's going to look like for the Islanders. Love to hear your thoughts on that below. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.